Anker have just released a massive update to their peripheral range, but rather than doing a load of individual videos on all of them, I thought I'd take a look at the updates in a single episode, because let's face it, no one wants to watch a balding middle-aged man talk about a portable battery on its own for 10 minutes straight. But there is a lot to pack in this episode, so let's crack on with these 4 devices. We've got the new Anker Prime Power banks with some of the most compact, densest designs and capacity and output that we've ever seen here in the studio. We've also got the new 3-in-1 MagGo wireless charger with a rather unique AirCool Qi 2 wireless charging system. And lastly, the ridiculous 14-in-1 docking station, which can power up to an 8K display and 3 individual displays simultaneously through its DisplayLink technology. Now, across the board, there's been some massive design ethos changes. It's still got a whiff of Anker about it, of course, but now the designs are slightly more rounded, with this kind of piano black texture on the products, and overall they've got this sleek and sophisticated feel about them. Now, another thing you'll find across the entire range is the new unified display format. On each of these products, you've got this crisp colour information display that seemingly appears out of the piano black texture. And although they all show slightly different bits of information depending on the product, they're all very similar indeed in their styling. But perhaps the simplest design of the entire range are the batteries. And when turned on, they show an output and input of any device connected to the ports on the top of the device, but it does a lot more than just that. Cycling through the batteries menu using the singular button on the side will show a bunch of various pages of information, including the battery temperature, which I think might actually be the very first mobile battery to show me its own internal temperature that I've ever seen. And that's an interesting stat to have. That's because it opens up extra options to charge more efficiently. Pairing the device to the app via Bluetooth opens up a whole world of possibilities, and there's 3 different charging modes that you can use with these. One of those is the smart dynamic charging, which will detect what device you're plugging in and then adjust the output or input dynamically to ensure that that never exceeds the rating of the product, which is handy to have, obviously, but even more handy is the power saving mode. This will manage the I/O to minimise a loss of energy through heat generation, which might result in a slightly slower charging speed, but will ultimately result in being able to conserve its internal energy a lot better by keeping the battery cooler. This also has the added benefit of extending the lifespan of the product that you're plugging into it and the battery, because you're not putting it under as much strain as you would do by using everything to its maximum potential. So it's amazing to see the flexibility that this offers. But if those 2 options weren't enough, you've also got the ability to customize the maximum power output per port, which is another really handy feature, especially if you're using these batteries to power perhaps some particularly sensitive equipment that requires a very specific output. And because these batteries are capable of significant power output, it's very possible that you'll end up using this for more than just your run-of-the-mill tasks. For all purposes, the 20,000 mAh battery and the 26,000 mAh battery have the same functionality, except for the total output being capped at 220 watts on the smaller and 300 watts on the larger. So depending on what you want to charge will determine which one you should go for. If you're charging multiple pieces of higher powered equipment like drones or laptops, I'd recommend the 26K version for that additional power output. Now, these are really some incredibly advanced batteries with a ton of functionality. Probably the most advanced small form factor batteries I've ever tested, and have control that's on par with some of the massive bigger power stations that we've featured in the past. It's the first time I've seen that sort of thing on a small battery, and they're so tiny. I can't believe how compact these are. The 26,000 mAh model is easily smaller than some 20k batteries I've had in the past, and it's wild how they've managed to shrink this technology down into such a dense package. Now, there's a clever reason why they've capped this one at 26,000 mAh rather than shooting for the moon, and that's because of flight regulations. Many commercial flights won't let you actually board with a battery over, I think it's 27,000. So they've made sure that this meets flight safety regulations, both in size and design. But going back to the app, there's actually a little secret function of these power banks, and that when you shake it, it starts a Pomodoro timer, which is basically a working process where you work for a certain amount of time, break for a certain amount of time, wash, rinse, and repeat. And you work in these kind of little set sessions. You can now set the time in the app for the Pomodoro timer and then start the timer by shaking. A really little cool functionality, and it adds a bit more use to what is otherwise a rather single-focused product. The battery doesn't have a speaker, however, which is a tad shame, so you do have to keep your eye on that timer for when it hits 0. Still a very useful feature, and I know a lot of people do use the Pomodoro technique, and if you're one of those people, let me know in the comments below. But now it means you don't have to take a separate timer with you or use a phone app. You can just use these to do that job. Now, before I move on to the new 3-in-1 charger, I'll go on to that next, there is one other function of these, and it becomes apparent when you flip them over and you reveal a set of pogo pins on the bottom. Now, I haven't gotten hold of it, so I can't tell you how it performs, but Anker are releasing a charging station for their Anker Prime batteries, which supposedly offers unparalleled performance for charging these back up. It apparently uses a custom high voltage base which minimises heat loss, making the charging process efficient whilst charging at over 250 watts, which is insanely fast for a small battery. That means charging this to full from completely empty will take about 20 minutes at most, which for a battery of this size is bloody wild. But talking about fast charging, this is a nice segue into the new wireless charger. And this has had some increased speeds as well. The new version offers the new Qi 2 standard, which gives you 25 watt wireless charging, which for a wireless charger is actually pretty quick. And that's up from the 15 watt maximum of the previous Qi 1 standard. Now, wireless charging has historically been less efficient, and it also generates a lot of heat. Well, this new range has brought with it a rather ingenious method of using it as an active cooled charging pad, which supposedly results in charging that's 10 degrees cooler, helping you prolong the lifespan of your device's internal battery. Typically, as well, as older wireless chargers become hotter, the speed of the charge slows down, but because this can maintain its temperature, it allows to provide a much more consistent wireless charging experience from 0 to 100. That's all shown on the display that I mentioned earlier. Now, this has a little swipe control, and like the batteries have various models of charging options. There's a sleep mode, which sets the cooling and charging speed slower so that it charges up gradually overnight. And there's also a boost mode, which speeds up the charging for a quicker experience if you need to top it up throughout the day. And then lastly, there's an ice mode, which turns the cooling up to max if you're looking to perhaps use this phone whilst it's charging and you're generating a lot of heat. And given that your phone will magnetize through the MagSafe here and hold it straight in an upright manner, it's very possible that you might actually use it to potentially watch something or FaceTime someone or even run games at the same time it's charging. So this cooling technology is absolutely incredible. Incidentally, the phone charging pad can actually be rotated upwards as well, like that, if you ever needed to, for whatever reason. I guess you can charge on it as if it were just a flat charger rather than relying on the MagSafe. Now, I was a little bit worried about this display because my eyelids might as well be made of cling film. I can basically see through them, and anything that emits more than the dullest of glows at night, I can see that glow through my eyes closed. Believe me, it is a curse. You might as well shine car high beams directly into my eyeballs at night. My wife thinks that I must be the only one with eyelids 1 micron thick, so please, if you suffer from this affliction and can see through closed eyes, let me know in the comments that I'm not alone. Anyway, thankfully, I found that this simply turns off after a short wait, and if you hold your finger on it, it'll also just turn it off as well, so I can slip into the dark, cold, peaceful embrace of the void once more. Obviously, it does a lot more than just your phone. You've also got the Apple Watch arm on the right-hand side, and you can also charge your AirPods on the base as well. Now, the display on the base will then give me information on all of the charging, along with instant safety alerts for charging issues or misalignment. So that's a nice little touch, although misalignment's pretty much impossible with the phone because it's MagSafe. But it's also got NFC as well to quick launch the app. So tapping your phone to the base allows you to open up the app with that singular tap, which I guess isn't necessarily necessary. But it is kind of cool. I'm not sure I'll automatically think to do that, given that everything else on the planet requires the painstaking process of opening up your phone, unlocking it, and then swiping through page after page after page after page after page of apps, or if you're clever, searching for it manually. That's always going to be my go-to, just out of habit, and I'm a creature of habit. But I do like the little addition of NFC. It's a nice little touch that I wouldn't necessarily think of. Incidentally, the charging stand comes with a 65-watt GAN power brick as well, which is designed for maximum safety and is ultimately a cooler experience because it uses gallium nitride instead of silicon, which is another tick box for me to keep things cool and safe, and it's another thing that's right at the forefront of technology. Honestly, these two devices, the batteries and the charging stand, are some of the most advanced charging devices you can buy right now, both in portable and stationary format, and I think they've blown me away with their functionality and design. But now we've got to move on ultimately to the next one, the kind of big boy here, which is the absolutely mental 14-in-1 station. This has, without a doubt, instantly found a permanent place on my desk. It's one of those products that you don't realise how useful it'll be until you actually start using one. Sure, I've used docks before, but this is something else. Now, on the rear, you've got an Ethernet port capable of 2.5 gig connection speeds, and there's 3 USB-A ports, 2 HDMI ports, a display port, and a USB-C upstream connector to run from your device to the hub for 10 gig speeds between them. And on the front, there's an SD and micro SD card slots, 2 10 gig USB-C ports, and a 5 gig USB-C port, along with an audio jack. So the I/O is extremely comprehensive and brings a ton of extra features to whatever Mac that you're plugging this into, especially when you're using it with displays, because this can power up to 3 additional displays, and you've got a hell of a lot of options when it comes to what display modes you want to use per port, whether they mirror or whether they extend, and this is all controlled through the additional DisplayLink software. Now, I haven't necessarily made much use of this DisplayLink technology in particular, to any lengthy degree anyway, other than just testing it, because I'm one of those weirdos with a single ultra-wide monitor rather than multiple displays. But if you are running several displays consistently, you can see information on those running from the onboard display in the dock. And it even shows information and the resolution and the refresh rate of those devices that you're running too, which is really handy at a glance. It's a good way of seeing whether or not the displays are running at their maximum capabilities. And of course, like the rest of the range, clicking through you can see even more information. And the interface is controlled by fiddling with this little knob here. Anyway, playing with that will reveal the current output of the ports on the front, which you can incidentally do both fast charging and data, but then you can also cycle to the fan speed and the settings, and you can further go into those by clicking this knob. Ultimately, this thing is a must-have for anyone using any form of Mac, whether that's a permanent setup like mine, giving me easier access to a bunch of ports that do both fast charging and connectivity without having to do desk gymnastics trying to plug things into impossible places, but also for those who might have a laptop and want to use a connection to a permanent setup with multiple displays. You can leave all of your peripherals in place, come home, plug your laptop straight into the hub, and you've just quickly expanded your setup to an at-home setup. Again, this isn't necessarily a new notion, but what Anker's new Prime device does is bring the absolute best experience possible with some of the highest supported specs and technology you can get in a hub today. And that, for me, seems like the whole point of the Anker Prime range. If you want to take a look at anything that I've showcased in this episode, such as the hub or the charger or the batteries, I'll leave a link in the description below. And for those watching my hideous mug on the big screen, you can whip your phones out and scan that QR code just there, and it will take you straight to the website to find out a little bit more about the Anker Prime range. But prior to this episode, I was super excited to take a look at all of these in more detail after experiencing them back at IFA, and I can unequivocally say that they haven't disappointed. They are, without a doubt, some of the most advanced peripherals that you can buy for your devices at the moment. And if you're after any type of device that the Prime range do, they should absolutely be worth your consideration. And for me, there's a few pieces of this range that are going to find their way into my daily use. They offer just incredibly robust compact designs with some top-end peak technology and features, and I think the fact that they've dropped a bomb on everything they've done in the past and built these new products from the ground up for 2025 was absolutely the right thing to do.